So how do we go from a graph to a function, and in this case, a cubic function? Let's have a look. The profit from sheet type h can be modeled by a different function h of x, where x is the number of sheets sold and h of x is the profit in euro. I know that this is not necessarily that much important in here, but what we have to understand is that this axis represents profit, and that is number of euro, and here is number of sheets. That's what we are having here. The the diagram below shows the graph of our function h for some of the values of x. The coordinate of 4 points on the graph are given. So we have 1, 2, 3 roots, and then we have the coordinates where the graph cuts the y-axis. And we have to use this information to write our function in this form. So basically, we need to have cubic equation. Now, the only thing about this graph is that we don't need to multiply the brackets. We can leave it in this form. Okay, so how do we do that? Always, when it comes to graph, going from the graph to the function, we start with the x-axis. So that's where we look at roots that we can change into factors. So let's do that. So this root is x equal minus 21. This root here is x equal 12. And this root here is x equal 47. So how do we change roots into factors? We move the numbers to the other side of the equation to join the x. Therefore, we change the sign. So we have x plus 21, x minus 12, and then move 47, x minus 47. Now, that is all good. However, now we need to know, have we gotten it right? We don't have any indication to know whether our numbers are wrong, but then we have this value here that stands in front of those brackets. So we have to figure out what that number is. So we considered the x-axis. Now we are considering the y-axis. So y-axis, this number at the end, this value of y, that's the number that will be in our equation at the very end, meaning the number without x, because cubic equation generally have a form. We have a number that stands beside x to the power of 3, a number that stands beside x to the power of 2, a number that stands beside x with no power, and then the number at the end. So this number at the end here in this function has to be minus 1,316, because that's what this value is telling us. How do we get this number? So the number at the end comes from multiplication of these three numbers. So if I multiply these three numbers, that's where I'm going to be getting that last value. So if we multiply 21 by minus 12 by minus 47, the question is, what are we going to get? So when we put that in the calculator, we get 11,844. I'm saying, okay, that's not the number I need to have. That's the reason why here I'm going to be multiplying by another value. So basically, when I multiply these three values, I'm going to get 11,844, but there is a number here that is multiplied. And that number, when multiplied by 11,000, should give us minus 1,316. So how do we find the value of a? Well, it is a multiplication. How do I eliminate that number if I want to have a value of a? Always dividing and dividing both sides of the equation. So if we divide that, we put that in the calculator, we get that a is